So, this may well be the shortest of all these videos. And when I say it may well be the shortest, I think it is going to be the shortest because there is only a handful of comments. Most of them are things like Merry Christmas, Merry Christmas. This probably because it came out on 24th of December. So lots of nice things from people. And then the first real comment you get the sort of a question, but you know, thank you for John Sykes and thank you Jack Ray and Hashem and Phil Vandlin. It's all very nice of you to say Merry Christmas. Carl van and in many, if not most Ottoman campaigns, had one or another Italian state, to be frank, a few decades earlier, even Venetian, help, mainly in logistics, but also French help too. Politicians being well, politicians is not a unit phenomenon. No, it isn't. In fact, quite often the system was very much not Christians versus, Christians versus Muslims. It was often, how do I put this politely, a very much intermixed affair. Now, what does this mean? This means there are often people who are happy to stab people like, let's be honest, the Venetians were happy to stab the Byzantines in the back, as long as it helped them. Then when it stopped helping them, they were very unhappy because they'd lost the Byzantines. What you realise is that people are often very, very short-sighted. As you go through history, you realise that lots of people are very good at seeing the threat in front of them and thinking about the short-term economic gain in front of them. Very difficult to look at the long term. Very, very different thing to look at the long term. Alex Magnus, great video. I'm kind of missing the singing mic checks though. I guess that's why they say to be careful what you wish for. Well, they still occasionally come back when I'm not sure about the mic. They do occasionally come back. This week, the plug worked. I got the book for Christmas. That's good, because, you know, the shameless book plug is an important part of my life. If it wasn't for the shameless book plug, and the... Well, how do I put this? So, currently, when this comes out, I'm away in Australia. I am still, despite being in my mid-30s, considered a relatively junior academic. How do we fund trips? How do we fund research? How do we fund a book? Doing the book research? How do we support our lives when the universities have moments of forgetting to pay their contract lecturing staff? All these things, well, it comes down to credit cards. And in fact, I got my first ever credit card. I, up to that point, avoided them like the when I was doing research for the book, because there was no other way I could have the necessary funds to do the research and do the trips I needed to do. I'd either have to take money off my family, which I didn't want to do, because, you know, they're not exactly that well off. I wish they were. I wish I was like sort of... I've got Julian Corbet's book in front of me. Julian Corbett and I had a very nice, you know, rich family that'll give me a lot of money that can fund my lifestyle and fund my historical research. But sadly, I don't have that. So I talked to my colleagues and my peers and my professors, and basically all said, oh yeah, well, this is how we started out. Because the system was designed for people who are like this, and hasn't been really changed that much since. Slowly being evolved, but not really changed that much. And it didn't need to be for many years because of the way government funded universities. So it didn't need to be changed. And then they took government funding away and replaced it with loans and things like that, and suddenly, ouch, there are problems. There are issues here. So, when you're in that scenario, what do? You get a credit card, because it's the only option. So I got the credit card. And I got the book done, and it took me well, I got set back quite heavily by COVID because of the issues with earning enough money and paying it off during that time. But I had sort of paid it off before I did the Canada trip. Canada trip uh, combined with university forgetting to pay me had meant that I had not I paid down a large chunk of it, but I still had about half of it to go when the Australia trip came up. Australia trip, that's pretty much maxed it out. So I am in Australia entirely paid on the credit card. Yes, thanks to your support, it's actually made it viable, actually made it possible. But yeah, and so I'll be paying off the credit card with my other historical income. Because that's how you have to run it as a research program, because you need the money up front. Until you're earning enough money that you can put the money up front earlier on, or you have a higher level of guaranteed income to base it off. That is sort of how you need to do it. It's either short-term loans or credit cards. And I only have one credit card. I keep to the one credit card, and I'm very careful with that one credit card. And I still have mild issues when I stare at the credit card screen. But yeah, if it wasn't for things like the shameless book plug about the people who do Patreon, who have funded Australia, who have funded, who have subscribed to the channel, who've joined the channel, people who do the PayPal donations and all the other things, I wouldn't be able to afford to do this because I wouldn't have enough money coming through to be able to run the credit card. Or let me put it this way. The thing about the credit card that's interesting is that the credit card amount I was allowed based on my contract lecturer salary is very different compared to the amount I'm now allowed because of the regular income courtesy of you. It might not be a lot of money. It's a lot of money to me because it allows me to buy all my books and to slowly build up and pay off these things and fund my research. But it's enough of a regular income that it's allowed me to actually push up my credit card and be able to afford to do Australia. Be able to afford to do a lot of other things. Hopefully. But thank you. And I'm glad. I hope you enjoyed the book for Christmas. I hope a lot more people buy the second edition, because I'd really like there to be a third edition, because then apparently I can get they will put me into a competition where I could win money because it's such a popular book, and I wouldn't mind the prize. They were going, they were talking when I mentioned it about the honor of the prize and the prestige of the prize, and I was sort of going, yeah, nice, and they went, yes, and it's a £2,500 check, and I went, yes, please, put me in for it. No, you have to get to a third edition. But if you get a third edition, we will also do a audiobook version. I went, yay, can I do the audiobook? Or can I get Drac to do the audiobook? Or can me, Drac, Gareth and Dan all do sections of the audiobook? And they went, that sounds too complicated, but we think we can do it. See, the thing is, what I would do is I would read out the main text. And I'd get Drac to read out most of the quotes. But where the quotes have interaction, that would be where Gareth and Dan come in, because then the most of them is three people interacting. And I think that would be a cool thing to have it done listed out and done. And I might try and do that myself if they'll give me permission to do it. I'll do it. Anyway, but that will again take time and funding, but we'll try and do it. Do up. Watch because it may be interesting and not overly covered. Almost zero knowledge appearance. So cool. Personally don't care how we got from iron ships to dreadnoughts, though. I respect why others do. It's interesting, but yeah, to me there's a but. Been loving the cruiser stuff. Yeah, I get it. The Ottoman-Venetian War is... I do realise when I do some of these topics that in terms of widely discussed information there isn't much out there. And I know when I do these topics they are not going to do that well with the algorithm, because the algorithm seems to favour things which are known as good quantity stuff. So, for example, there is recently a Netflix documentary. And one of the things which came up as the suggested things from YouTube for me to do to boost my channel would be a response to that documentary. There are two small issues with this. One, I'm a naval historian. Two, I am not an Egyptologist. I am not. And three, my knowledge of Cleopatra mainly goes down to her navy. And I haven't really studied that much stuff. My main view on the subject was, though, she was part of the Ptolemaic dynasty, which were notoriously anti having relations with anyone other than a relative. Nieces, sisters, daughters, all were up for grabs as far as they were concerned. Aunts, all those were perfectly fine in their views. They didn't seem to go outside of the dynasty that often. It's also presuming that, well, we won't get into that, but so I am skeptical, but it's not my area of specialism, so I wasn't going to do a response video to that. No. No matter how many times YouTube basically goes, well, you know, this is a very popular topic at the moment. Not ready for me to do. When are 1920s and 1930s aircraft carrier design going to be the popular topic? When is my PhD subject going to be the popular topic for YouTube to suggest? Anyway, leave that to one side. But no. Bad union being joined up. Felix B. So, they fought over the spice trading routes and find out shortly thereafter that the Portuguese took over the spice trade. Stay Brent puts, sometimes war is like that. Yep. And to be honest, the Portuguese didn't take over the spice trade. They started taking a hefty chunk of it, which reduced the cost. Then you had the Dutch turn up into the Dutch East Indies. And they, of course, go even further, because the Portuguese go to... mainly to India. They do go a little bit further, but mainly they go to India. The Dutch go to Southeast Asia, to Java. And even up eventually to Japan. They go the full way. Then come off them the English East India Company. And you slowly have these traders build up. Now, here is the thing that's always interesting for me. The amount of people who confuse history when it comes to these trade routes and the discovery. Because they phrase it as points or as voyages of exploration. Which is true, but it's not exploration into the unknown. In fact, you can argue that even before the world was mathematically and scientifically proved to be round, or rather theorized to be round, and then proved with people actually sailing around and going, they haven't fallen off the edge yet. You have people virtually understanding it is round because of the way trade routes work and sea trade routes work. Because you have there is this idea that before the Western navies turn up, the European navies turn up, there aren't ships plying those trades. There are. In fact, when they go down the coast of Africa, they see trade almost the whole way along. They are following existing trade routes. They're going to existing trade ports. They're already trade ports. They have been there for centuries. The difference is, and I would argue this is the interesting thing, because of the peculiarities of the North Atlantic, the ships built tend to be pretty darn hardy. and pretty tough. And so they tend to do the voyages in one. Whereas most of the other ships are, there is trade going between port, to get get goods from port A to port D. It'll go A to B, then another trader will take it B to C, another trader will take it C to D. When you've got the Western ships coming in, the Northern European ships coming in, especially, and even the Portuguese and the Spanish ships, but they are also, to an extent, I would include them in that classification of Northern European ships because they're designed for the Atlantic versus the Mediterranean build vessels. They do that, and they go A to D. And if you think about that A allows you to buy goods for the value they were at A, and sell them for the value you get at D, or nearly the value you get at D. Probably set aside cheaper to get a cut and look at the market. But it means you buy the good at the most cheap, and you sell them at the most expensive. Now this destroys the ports in the middle unless they have goods which people will actually go to. And this causes all sorts of issues over Africa and around the world as those ports get cannibalized into the major entrepôts that you see growing up. And you suddenly, ports that were thriving ports become fishing villages. So you go, well, hang on. The architecture of this place doesn't feel like it's been a fishing village for hundreds and hundreds of years. It feels like it was something slightly bigger at some point. And you soon find out it was. It used to be one of those coastal trade ports, stopping off points. So that's what you're sort of talking about as an effect on spice trade. And that's the really big effect on the Ottomans and the Venetians. Because that's starting to happen even as this war's going on. But the Ottomans fight a war to get control of it because they presume it's the Venetians which are taking the money away from them. But at a certain point they realise, hang on, those people are going and making this amount of money and we can't get that much money because we buy the goods at the value of C before we take it to D. And that's far more expensive because that's got the profit margin for the person who's taking it from A to B, the person who's taking it from B to C, and the person who's taking it, and then you're having to put in a profit margin for you to get it to D. And suddenly that's the most expensive. Whereas if you can do A to D, you can take it from A at the price you pay at A. From A, you can take it to D, sell it at the price you would have sold it for, that they would have sold it for at C, and still banked the profit equivalent to what they'd have made getting it from A to B and B to C. So you still bank 2/3 of the profit. Putting it simply. Usually, actually, you bank it more than you put it as almost half the profit you usually get from taking the C to D, and that's where you really make your money. So instead of it being sort of 2/3, it's 5/6 of the profit, 5/6 of the whole the cumulative profit that would have been added on for the whole route. You're getting one lump of. That's where you make your money. Timur Babakan. Great Ottoman Venetian Warriors Battle of Preveza. Let's see. That's 1538. That's between the Ottomans and the Holy League. So you've got Venice on one side, you've also got the Papal States, Genoa, Spain, Mantua, and Malta. And there is an Ottoman victory in that battle, but the Ottomans did bring 122 galleys under Harun Pasha, Senades, Dragnot, and Sede al-Reis. So basically a who's who of some of the best naval officers the Ottoman Empire ever had. 20,000 soldiers. And ouch. Well, yeah, that's definitely a later war. This is the earlier war I'm talking about in that video, in my video. But I'm just remembering about Bella Proversa. It's there's 100 and well, let's put it this way: the Holy League brings pretty much 202 ships, 112 galleys, 50 galleons, and 140 barks with them, and frankly, yeah, they get 128 ships captured, destroyed, or sunk. The command structure is an absolute mess in that battle. I think Andrea Dore, the Genoese admiral, is in charge, and yeah, it's an interesting battle. I'll have to do a video about it at some point. Alex Hunt, self-destructive hubris is a recurring theme in the history of Venice. Let's get destroyed the largest Christian state between us and the Islamic world. How could this go wrong? Well, you must remember, Byzantium was a problem for Venice because, you know, they disagreed with Venice controlling so much territory which used to be Byzantine. It's terrible of them. Anyway, thank you very much for watching. I'm rather surprised this made 20 minutes. Probably I've been off wandering topics, but I hope you enjoyed, and thank you again for your support. As I think in the earlier discussion I made it clear, it really wouldn't be possible to do what I'm doing without your support. Thank you, and take care.